I always worked hard. I never felt that I had to work harder to compete with them. I worked harder to compete with everyone in my newsroom. Whatever newsroom that was, I wanted my story to be the lead. I wanted to, have an exclusive. I worked really hard for me.
I would be carrying the equipment out to go shooting, and they would be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm going on a shoot." And they say, "But you're a girl." And I actually, this was probably rude of me, but I couldn't resist. I grabbed my breast and said, "Yes, as a matter of fact, I am a woman." And then I would walk out the door, because it's like, what do you do with that?
My goal was to kind of forge my own way. People were very shocked. Journalists kind of had a hard edge kind of image to them.
But I never saw it as, boy, I have to work harder because I'm a woman.
I was kind of tired of them asking me, or why can't I shoot and edit? Why can't I do that?
People would always try to be discouraging, like, "Oh wow, somebody as sweet as you wanting to go into the journalism field."
Kim Young, Ginny Orzel, and Mary McCrank all come from very different backgrounds. But these three women have more in common than just their current roles as college professors. They're all women who spent their careers working in the male-dominated field of journalism. While Young was a radio and television reporter, Orzel worked behind the scenes shooting and editing, and McCrank was a print journalist. They all have similar stories from their time in industry. While Young grew up in a family that supported her dreams of becoming a journalist, McCrank grew up in a community that didn't expect it at all.
I grew up with brothers. I grew up in a family that was equal. My dad and my mom were equal partners in a marriage and in raising children. I never saw this. And there was no way I was going out into the world and have that happen. It was just foreign to me. No way.
But not until I took a journalism class at Mercy High did I actually realize it was an option, because most women my generation became educators, or they went into that kind of a field, sort of more of a service-oriented field. I knew that wasn't for me. I'm just so lucky to have been able to go into that field at the time when, a lot of people from my background, going to all private, all girls Catholic school, most people wouldn't have really found themselves into that field.
And figuring out how to be taken seriously as a woman wasn't and still isn't easy.
I come in and I say, it doesn't work this way, it works this way. Nobody listens to me. It's as if I didn't say anything. And then I tell a male staff member or another male faculty member the exact same information. He says it, all of a sudden everybody listens to me.
I decided I wanted to go into hard news for a few reasons. One of which was I didn't want to be stereotyped as a female feature writer.
It took me 4 years to finally get the computers to have exactly what I requested previously. But they didn't believe me. And of course they fought me on it, and I had to go back to the documentation. I think that if I was a man, it would have come much easier to me.
I wanted to get hard-hitting information, and I wanted to kind of blaze my own trail and be a tough reporter.
I'm always having to prove that I am good enough, and I always feel like I have to do more and work harder and have more knowledge, because I'm not going to be taken seriously. It's like that my whole life.
Young had a different experience. Throughout her time in television news, she was lucky to work for men who treated her as an equal when it came to story assignments.
I'm Kim Young. Coming up, I'll tell you why.
I covered the political beat. I covered Buffalo City Council. I covered, that was my beat. I covered murder. I never was pushed aside into a corner that was frilly sort of, let's give Kim children's stories or whatever, or the mommy beat. That doesn't mean I don't know many of my friends who have not been so fortunate.
These women who weren't as fortunate include those who came before and helped forge a path for future female journalists.
I was kicking down doors long before there were doors there to kick down. So, but before I did that, there were people who busted through before me. So I wasn't that first crop.
It's kind of funny because I grew up on Mary Tyler Moore.
There is another job.
Oh?
figured I'd hire a man for? If you can get by on 15 less a week, we'll make you a producer.
It does seem that you've been asking a lot of very personal questions that don't have a thing to do with my qualifications for this job. And I'm Mary Richards. I'm the new,
Wonderful. I've been telling Lou we needed a new one.
When I went into the business, there were role models. For me, there was a reporter, Jessica Savage.
This is NBC News Digest, sponsored by Michelob Light. Here is Jessica Savage, NBC News.
Good evening. A White House spokesman tonight said Syria rejected Beirut airport as the site for the first meeting on Lebanese reconciliation. But there were more attacks on non-striking truckers today. I'm Jessica Savage in New York.
I had role models, and then subsequently women that I worked with in television who were older than I, they blew the doors down in local markets. So, you know, I just reaped the benefits of what they had done.
Now Young, Orzel, and McCrank are role models themselves for their students. But getting here wasn't easy.
So sometimes sources would try to put you off guard. Oh, what's a nice young girl like you doing this tough job? And it was because you were asking them about closed-door meetings and why they were holding them.
Men would always offer to carry the equipment for me. And I would always politely say, no, thank you, no, thank you. And then one day I said, do you ask men to carry their equipment? No. And I said, then why are you asking me? Do you think I'm incompetent to be able to carry this equipment? And then it was like, no, and these guys would back off.
I've had people proposition me, I've had people say things that are inappropriate, and made me really uncomfortable.
You always put the mic up through somebody's shirt so you don't see the cord and it looks neater and, you know, it looks more professional. Well, there were male clients that couldn't wait for me to mic them. You know, I would show them how to do it, but they would prefer me putting my arms up their shirts to mic them. And of course, they would make all kinds of comments of, oh, you know, think you know what I mean? Like as if I was sexually touching them.
When you're covering stories, you get cozy with the cops, or you get cozy with judges, you get cozy with politicians, and they feel like they can cross that line.
I've had clients where they would come in and they would watch the commercial or come in for a consultation on the script, and you know, they'd give me a big hug. Slowly but surely their arm would, you know, their hand would be soon touching my bottom, and of course I would readjust it.
I had this attorney who ended up marrying the lead anchor at the station. He was a jackass. And he said to me, we were at this event, and he said, oh, weren't you the girl who left their heel prints on my Mustang roof during prom or something? It was like this really weird thing. And then, you know, like they're delivering bread or something. It's like, hey, Kim, I got more on that loaf of bread, or, you know, alluding to the size of his penis.
It was kind of one of those things where, you know, if you want a job, you don't say anything. This is what it is, and you deal with it, and don't say a word to anybody. Just keep moving. If you want a job, keep your mouth shut.
You're walking this fine line because, you know, if I felt like if I said, you're a jerk, you can't talk to me that way, then that source shuts down. Then I don't have that pally kind of relationship. So I took a lot of harassment that I probably never should have, only to keep a relationship going. If I could talk to my young self, you know, I would say that that's not appropriate, and you can't let anyone talk to you like that.
Even though McCrank says she didn't face too much discrimination for being a woman, she did face a lot of it when she came out as gay. She says it's important to her to let people know who she is up front, regardless of the consequences.
The way I viewed it is I would never have wanted to work anywhere where they would be discriminatory. I mean, if it wasn't something that came up in conversation, I may have not disclosed it. But later in life, as you become more connected to the community and people know who you are, it would be very weird to not say to somebody, oh, hey, you met my wife at a community action event last week. You know, she was there with the bank and you were there with your nonprofit. It would be weird. It would be almost like lying to not let somebody know that they knew my wife.
Young also says staying true to yourself is important in this business. As a television news reporter, she worked with consultants who told her which color lipstick she should wear, gave her clothing advice, and told her how to do her hair. As hard as it was, Young set her own personal limits and didn't sell her soul to the job.
I had to present a certain image, and so I understood that, and you know, I was open to that to a certain degree. Again, when I was reporting on farming, I wasn't wearing blazers and suits and lipstick that matched the color of the grape crop that I was reporting on.
The most difficult part of training here at Paris Island is an endurance course called the Crucible. The Crucible teaches recruits here unity.
But then again, when I was anchoring, it's a much different kind of dynamic. I know what the disparity is. I know that my male counterpart got fat and bald, and yeah, that just doesn't play well.
We didn't have anything like that.
You mean helmets or space
no helmets,
program?
no
We didn't have the space program?
No, are you kidding?
I saw friends of mine who lost their jobs at 50 because they were too old to be reporting anymore, where my male friends are still working.
The disparity also shows up in paychecks.
At the time I entered the field, there was this really fascinating story called the pink collar ghetto. And what it was saying was, as the journalism field attracted more women, the pay scale went down. And as the pay scale went down, more women entered the field.
My colleague, who was a male doing the very same job I was, we were talking about salaries in the newsroom, and he was making a substantial amount more than I was. And so I went to our general manager and I said, I don't really understand this pay difference. We're doing the same job, and yet, he's being paid more. And my general manager said to me, but he has a family to raise. And I just said to him, but I also have 3 children, and well, you're married. And
publishers knew they could offer less salary because we were women, and that more women enter the field because we weren't as hung up on salary, whereas maybe a male reporter would be demanding more, knowing that he could leverage more.
I remember really pushing back against that and just saying how unfair that was. He did give me a raise. It never really equaled to what Scott, my colleague, got, but it was the first time that I encountered that pay difference.
Nobody ever taught us how to leverage for salaries. My friends and I laugh now. Our fathers didn't expect us to go into the fields that we're in.
Quite frankly, he wasn't even doing half the job I was. He was, I love him to death, but he was lazy as all get out, and I was really busting my tail just getting all kinds of stories.
Orzel and Young partially attribute these kinds of disparities to the white male-dominated world we live in and have lived in for as long as many of us can remember. But they also say women are partly responsible for buying into the narrative being sold to us.
Who's making those decisions? And who's allowing that to happen? As much as people have fought and as much as people have, protested against it, nothing is changing because there's too many white men that are in charge, and that's got to change. And how do we change that?
It takes women to fight against the patriarchy. It takes women to stand up to that and not subscribe to that. But what I think is happening is that women are buying into it.
There needs to be consequences, and I think that it has to be coming from a lot higher up.
Too many women reporters are also believing that you only need to be Miss America to be a journalist. The patriarchy will exist so long and only until women bring it down. And women we're our own worst enemies.
The whole point of our system was to prevent something like this from happening, and yet here we are.
If all little girls are seeing are, Disney images of what women are, and female anchors who are, just eye candy and asking stupid questions, then it will never move forward.
Even though times for women in male-dominated fields are tough, McCrank and Young say things are getting better.
Sometimes I just kind of throw it out there, oh, my wife and I this weekend did this, or we like this show, or our, maybe our reading habits. And it catches students' attention. And a lot of times students have come up to me and thanked me for being so open, that they too were struggling or had some issues with family, and just kind of knowing there was somebody out there in their field, in their department, who had gone on to overcome any adversity. It made them feel like they too can succeed.
What you will find when you go into this business is that women are really supportive of each other. I have found that my female friends, my mentors, you know, they were gracious and kind.
That really means a lot to me. Yeah, I feel very lucky.
Only time will tell if women will prevail over the patriarchy. We can start by standing up for ourselves and owning who we are as women.
Don't buy into the Barbie doll reporter narrative. I mean, you're a journalist. You have to hold on to the fact that you're a journalist. You're not eye candy. You're not there for ratings. You're a journalist, and your job is to tell stories. And yes, you have to look presentable and you have to look good while doing it, but you can't let somebody take who you are from you.
Kim Young, Ginny Orzel, and Mary McCrank all come from very different backgrounds. But these three women all share common stories and common hopes for the future.